Hey, welcome back to the Plug In Podcast, where I'm your host, Quentin. And guess what, everybody? I got Mr. Andre or Dre Charles back, our licensed therapist for mental health. He's back to join us again. We had a great conversation last week, and so we thought that we would come back together and kind of finish up what we were talking about. Um, we're we told you last week that we were going to dive into trauma. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And the title for today is basically kind of navigating through past trauma. And then we basically want to, at the end of this, hopefully there's a roadmap for us so that we can actually heal from our past trauma. We do understand that most of our scars and the damage that we have as men, normally we bury that um, is hidden. We tuck it away because of as we were talking about on the last episode, that masculinity or the macho man type of mentality. But what we want to do is just kind of uncover that. We have some red flags that may be out there. And then we just kind of want to kind of jump into the waters just so that we can kind of find a safe zone so we can actually recover from some of this past hurt. Now, trauma is a large topic. Um, I put together a nice little format, sent it over to my boy. We narrowed it. We got to narrow down to like there's three three components, but in some different areas, and we're gonna try to do all this in an hour. So you guys bear with us. How you doing, Dre?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm very excited that you were able and free to be able to join me back again on today. And like we said, man, we wanted to just kind of jump into the trauma before we even get into our layout, man. Eh, just kind of give men a definition of what trauma. Maybe they don't understand what the trauma that we're talking about, but kind of give a definition of the trauma that we're talking about, that past trauma,
Mhm.
so we can just kind of open up that door.
All right. So when you're thinking about trauma, trauma is like an overall overwhelming life event that occurred and resulting in some form of like a pervasive physical, emotional, or psychological response or distress within your body. Your central nervous system reacts, responds in a way when it has been the direct target of an event. It may have been something that you saw, something that you heard about. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you directly, but something that you heard that created a distress in your body, um, a threat, life, something that creates like if you think about COVID and just looking at the news with the pandemic going on, the hospitalizations and the deaths, it was something that we may not have had anyone pass or go through COVID, but by watching that and experiencing that secondhand can create a sense of hopelessness or intense fear because the state we were in. So that would be like a psychological, interpersonal, traumatic experience that causes a reaction within our body that we are not in control of, but we experience it based on what we face. And when we encounter something, our body responds. So it can be direct or indirect.
And that's kind of crazy, because as I was looking that up, it was like a lot of the information around traumatic stress was right around that central nervous system. It was around the body, which is kind of tough because I think sometimes you have pains or aches and all this kind of stuff in your body, and it's like, could that be part of a trigger? Something that triggered a response, like you said, like sort of like with COVID, and then maybe if you hear on the news, it's like another flash of some type of virus, and boom, you hear it, and it's like you kind of almost get the shakes.
Yeah,
Because it's like, yo, is that coming back to the US?
right.
And it frees up. And so I know what you're talking about because we had both. We experienced it in the beginning, that whole COVID situation, and then we had people pass away in our family
Mhm.
from it. So So it was really a it was kind of overwhelming that something, in 2020, it's like 2000. It's like, how do we get something that can actually be that deadly today and we can't cure it quickly?
Yes.
So I think that the stress, especially when it comes to men, is like, okay, so if I'm supposed to be protecting my family, how do I protect them from the COVID? Because
Yeah.
basically I have to go to work.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So, I mean, like, for you, I mean, during that time, I mean, were you getting calls from people who were trying to basically process the fact that, I had friends who are doctors, man, and they had to go out. They
Yeah.
they couldn't stay in the house, and they were my buddies were afraid that,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I talked to them, and it's like, dude, I'm out in the garage. It's taking me forever to go walk in the house. I mean, I'm bleached down, I'm soaked out, everything, but I'm still afraid to walk in the house because I got a wife and I got little kids. So, how was that for you? What was that experience even on your end?
Yeah. It was a little easier for therapists in a sense, like we were shut down for a time, so we couldn't go into the office while they figured out what we could do and still support people. So
Mhm.
that's when the whole telehealth really started picking up.
Uh-huh.
So I was I was spared in that sense where we didn't have to, but then we were able to go back in,
Okay.
and that is when I started experiencing some of the things, because realistically, it's for some they like the face-to-face interaction. So then we have to develop a system. So yeah, that was scary because you didn't know who, what, everybody was having contact at some point and didn't know if they had it. So
Yeah.
you're in constant distress coming in, stripping down, especially in the beginning. When they were talking about it's in the plastic bags, it's in the everything. So you're bleaching down groceries and spending
Right.
hours after doing. Oh yeah. So
Right.
it was a whole task every 24 hours.
Yeah, that had to be a lot. So now when we look at that, so that's like, we can, and this is the thing I want everybody to understand, is that when we talk about traumatic stress or post-traumatic events that happen in our life, I know first thing you think is, my father went to jail, or my dad did this, or my mom was on drugs. And so we think of these drastic extreme measures. Um, and mind you, those are some of the lethal ones, right? But then you can have gotten bit by a dog at 13
Right.
and
Right.
literally be trembling in fear at 50 when you see a dog walk by,
Mhm.
right? And these things can hinder you because, like I said, if I'm the man and I'm trying to take care of my family, and if I had a traumatic event where I got mauled by a dog and a dog is out here and I'm supposed to be protecting my kids,
Yeah.
you can freeze.
Yeah, you can absolutely freeze, and that would be one of those stress responses.
Yeah.
So that's more so. So I want to add a little clarification. So you can have a traumatic event
Mhm.
and not necessarily move into those areas that you're speaking of now, would be more like a post-traumatic stress situation, like
Okay. Okay.
PTSD. So when you have those where it's debilitating and you have intrusive thoughts, or you're avoiding things, or you have hypervigilance where your stress responses are coming up like fight, freeze, fawn, all of those things that we're
Yeah.
hearing about, that's when you have probably develop post traumatic stress disorder. And that happens, for instance, if you have, in the clinical definitions, acute stress disorder. If something happens and it's like about 3 to 4 weeks, and you're working through it, then you're okay. Well, not okay, but you don't necessarily have post traumatic stress disorder. But if you're going over a month clinically and you're not having any breakthrough and you're still being, hindered or debilitated
Mhm.
moving through that, you can technically then be diagnosed with PTSD. We're looking more like 6 months, you're still there. Then you have some things
Okay.
going on that can happen, because it can be through a lifetime depending on what you went through. And then it can be complex because you can add more situations on top of that, and one thing is triggering another. So it's like rapid fire. So
That is that is just terrible. And
yeah,
I and as men, And I really want to dive in this because like the sort of like the suicide rate for men, every year it seems to go up 2 to 3% every
Mhm.
single year, and that's just from the information that I found.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my research, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I know you breathe and live this stuff. So if anytime I throw out a stat that doesn't meet the real criteria, just kind of tell me because I'm kind of diving in on a broad spectrum. So please correct me. Don't feel free. I'm not offended.
I got you.
But I just know from what I've seen, man, it was like about 2 to 3% every year for like the last probably 10 years or so. There's been a spike in men uh, committing suicide, and was really crazy that I saw is that the spike was at between like 24 years old and like 34, almost 40 years old was the spike, and I'm like 24 years old, man. I was like, my son just turned 20, and I'm like, what what in the world has impacted your life as such a great, a traumatic event that would actually stress you at the level where you're like, you know what, I'm just overwhelmed. I can't take it anymore. Which leads me right into what we're going to start off, which is these red flags. Um, and I'm gonna give you a story, and then we're gonna jump right into
Okay.
some of the stuff. But I had a buddy of mine, man, his son basically um, shot himself in the head. He basically committed suicide. A teenager is still in high school. I know this father. This guy was a on time dad, man. This dude was in his son's life, supportive. I met him when through him uh, taking care, being more of a father to his daughter at the time.
Mhm.
When I go back, his son was not in high school at that time. So, but I kind of met him. His My wife was working with his daughter, and I'm like, man, this guy is like Johnny on the spot with his daughter, and it was the same thing with his son. So when me and him had a conversation, um, he said he was just really puzzled that being that close to his son, and he still like he felt like he still missed something. Um,
Mhm.
but that just kind of shows you like what has what hit this young man or any of our young guys out here who think either harming themselves or taking their life or whatever has drawn them to that. So
Mhm.
uh, we're gonna start just like with some red flags. Like so, when I looked at it, it was like probably oh man, probably about 20 different red flags that you can look at. But I was
Mhm.
like, we can't even talk that long. But one of them was avoidance behaviors. um,
Mhm.
so what I got here is like, so it's basically constantly avoiding certain places, people, or situations that may trigger some type of memory. So that's kind of what we were talking before, is that something happened back in our past, and then as we're basically living our life, that we can run into a place or the person or a person that resembles the person that may have done something to us, or maybe that situation. Just kind of explain that, man. Break that down. What does that look like?
So it's really this really like linear. It's a vast array of things that could impact the individual. So it may not look the same for each person.
Okay.
So two people in the house can experience the same thing and have completely different reactions.
Hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that their stress response system isn't valid. It's how their body interpreted what went on. So you
Okay.
can have individuals that are triggered by certain things, and it could be a TV, man. It could be the time of year. It could be the way the wind blew, because that's the way the wind blew at the time when that event happened 16 years ago. It could be the scent of a cologne, something, whatever, a trigger that can take you back to a distressing event can create angst within you and have you responding. Sometimes you have no idea what's going on until you process it. If you're, self-aware, or someone helps to bring that to your attention, maybe through trauma work or a family member saying, well, this was the time of year that Jake passed, so
Oh,
this
yeah.
is the person that you were closest to. So you don't know why you're feeling really somber and down. You just don't feel like you can make it throughout the day. So that is something that can come up. It can be the fact that you see something exactly like the event,
Mhm.
or you feel something and it was reminds you of the time of the event, and then you may not really know what's going on. So that's why you have other things that happen, and it could be a child that went through some things, or even the way they view as your body change, your mindset changes, the way you learn, what you see, how
Mhm.
you feel, even your attractions to different things, you can start to feel like, what, I can't handle the intrusive thoughts, I can't handle what's going on. And you feel like the only way out of whatever is going on is through committing suicide. So you have that must be the longest, scariest place to be, where you feel like you can't connect or reach out to anyone, because you may feel like no one understands you, or no one is here, or I'm a burden, or I'm better off this way, or I disappointed the person that I didn't want to disappoint.
Mhm.
So that was one of the options. It's just so many things that we don't know as to really why, but those are some of the factors that can go into it.
Yeah. I remember, man, my dad was like a yeller. Like, this dude would be yelling like crazy. I'm talking like crazy. And I remember, I mean, dude, I was married. I think I was probably my 2nd year of marriage, 2nd or 3rd year of marriage. And I remember being at Target. And I remember because it kind of freaked me out, but I remember being at Target and a young guy was getting into it basically with his girlfriend. Just he just went off the chains. And this dude started screaming to the top of his lungs. And dude, I literally can feel like me. Like I was like, I actually like register with the volume of his voice back to when I was a kid. And I thought that was just weird.
Yeah,
It was like the weirdest thing. And I told my wife, and this is the thing, I got like I was ready just to go rip this dude face off, right?
right,
Because of something that at that time I could never control. But now,
right,
today, I'm a pretty big fella now, so I can control the
yeah,
environment. But I must say, just being transparent, that was the first time I actually can connect that. Wow, so a place, person, situation. That was a situation
yeah,
that I actually can go, man, kind of like took me back to when I was a kid, and I was thinking that was like crazy weird that I
yeah,
can have this emotional feeling inside of me that took me back there, and that situation had nothing to do with me at all.
right,
But just because I heard this elevation in volume and voice with force, that it drew me back.
yeah. That's what we
And
call triggers. You got
yeah,
a trigger, and you may hear people say, "Yo, you messing with my triggers now." That's something that actually is taking me back to an event like such.
yeah.
There's people that can't handle that.
Yeah, and that was the thing and I'm glad I was able to handle it, and I'm glad me and my wife have a relationship where we can kinda really talk these things through. But it was, like, just so weird, like, it, like, literally weirded me out the whole for about a week, man. I was just like, "Wow," like, I called my mom, I'm like, "Ah," yeah, my mom like, "Yeah, that could happen." You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Because we all were in the house at that time, and she was like, "Yeah, that can kinda happen." It because it was such a traumatic event, and I was under the age of 10.
yeah,
Now what I learned as well is that in foster care, a lot of those kids, even if they're in their late 20s, are kinda stuck in the traumatic event that happened in their life. So they carry on, you'll meet someone that's like 25 or 30,
mhm,
but everything about them is like they're like 13. And it's
mhm,
like, they carry on and fussing and cussing, and you're like, it's not even that deep. I just said you can't have no pizza, but it's like when we went through training, it was literally a real thing. They were like, "Yeah, you're looking at 30 years old, and they're not it's not a regular 30-year-old."
right,
Foster care, the traumatic events that happen within a foster care for kids who age out of foster care. That means no one picks you up. I mean, that not pick you up, but no one adopts you.
Yeah.
They're stuck at whatever those ages of situations that happen in their life. And so I wanted to kind of make it really clear to you, to my guys, that yeah, it's gonna feel weird, and I'm sure you probably felt it and you don't know what to do with it. It was like, I know I just felt something that was weird, uh, but you need Andre because you really want to talk. If you don't have anybody to talk that through, you just pack it back down again. So it still is locked in as a trigger because you never actually release that trigger. So, um,
But I would like to stick a pin right there and say, honestly, that was because of the training that you were in the background for foster care. But that same thing cuts across.
mhm,
It could probably easily be 75, 80% of people that didn't go through foster care that still has the same types of triggers and events, because you have to understand that they didn't grow up in healthy households
yeah,
or they didn't have situations. We have maybe about 60% of the individuals that have secure attachment styles, which is a whole nother kind of situation,
mhm,
but that helped shape their navigating in the household with where they supported, where they seen, where they heard, where they cared for, where they responded to, did they feel the support and love? And those kind of things come up when you have individuals that have been in a secure household, where those that didn't go into secure household and have a secure family setting, they have triggers much like they didn't develop in the way that they should have, and can
oh,
appear to be much younger than they are, or they respond aggressive, and their action was out of sync with the precipitating event, is what we would call it.
uh-huh,
So I'm talking calm to you, but I may have said something that you didn't like. It triggered you in a sense
mhm,
from something from your childhood, and we're at a 2 or 3 talking, but you shot to a 5 because you
right,
heard something. And I'm like, yo, we just debating and talking, going through, our conversation. What's up? What did you hear and what happened? And why are you at this place? Because I don't know I don't know what I did, but
right,
it triggers something because grandma used to do that to you, or your
yep.
father never heard you, or your mother like pushed your buttons in a way and you didn't feel like you could have a voice. So now it took you all the way back there, and you're enraged because now you have more ability to speak.
That's the hitting the nail on the head, man. Is that once you get an opportunity to be able to say your piece and you feel comfortable, but by that time, there's still no discipline or self-control, so it just comes out in rage, and we're gonna get to that part of it too, because that kinda sits right into that hyper arousal, like, stuff that actually just kinda like kaboom, it just blows up out of nowhere. But the one I think is the toughest, that may actually do the most. I don't wanna say the man, it might do the most damage, is emotional numbness. And so, and for, everybody that doesn't know what that is it basically exhibiting or persisting lack of emotion or a difficulty to express your feelings. This is often a coping mechanism, um, for or or to protect, oneself from pain. Like you don't want any pain, so you create this numbness. And I heard a gentleman say that his wife. I was just kind of searching through YouTube to look for some content, and I ran across a guy talking about his wife's mother had passed away, and since he had never dealt with death, he didn't know what to do, so he did nothing. So he never had to like he never dealt with anything of that magnitude. So he said basically I was numb to the fact that he grew up with people getting killed or in the street or something. So death wasn't like a oh my goodness to him. It was just like man, your mom passed away, and he was like I didn't do anything. He said well he was and he was talking to men and he was like listen don't do what I did because it put a stress on my marriage because I didn't do anything, and your wife needs you. The family needs you to be, prompt. They need you to be alert. They need you to be comforting. They need you to be supportive. But he just said he just couldn't understand that he had this numbness. So kind of speak to that. What does that look like? And then where does that even come? I mean, I know so many things that can happen, but it's like that's pretty deep, man, to be numb.
So numbness can be on two ends. It's a coping mechanism that can keep you safe because if I'm numb, I don't whatever goes on, I'm not recognizing I don't feel it because I don't really care. I I want to probably care at some point, but I've trained my body and my mind so much that I don't feel. So I just exist. I feel maybe anger because we don't acknowledge the other feelings. Anger is secondary.
You're
So we
right.
don't acknowledge the other feelings. So we only react when we feel violated, except for what happens when we are the one that did the violating by not being emotionally available. We're not taught to express our feelings or recognize our feelings or know. So it's always that. Then you
Yeah.
have the fact of desensitization because there's so much going on in the world. Like we spoke about deaths. If you grew up like we grew up in city and all of that, and you see death upon death and killing upon killing, it's like second nature or expected that that happens. So you're not as bothered by it. And
Yeah.
when it occurs, if you're not in tune and don't pay attention to your, like, I guess, have a sense of empathy,
Yeah.
which is a part of why you may not express any type of feeling and have emotions because you didn't develop the care or concern for other people because self-preservation. I got to make sure I'm good, and the way I feel like I'm good is I may play the video game, smoke and drink and hang whatever. When I feel a little uncomfortable, I'm not sharing that with anybody. I'm going to go have sex. I'm going to go fight. I'm going to go shoot somebody, whatever the case is, because I
Right.
need to get this out. But it's in an antisocial type of way that's not healthy. So those are the things that create that emotional numbness. We've gone through so much that we can't necessarily recognize what we're feeling. So we shut it down and we say, I don't have any feelings. And it's hard to get to that. Walls, you're talking about height and width.
Yikes. That's pretty deep. And I mean, for guys, dude, that's gotta be a great task to sit down with fellas who have built these walls, or who've come out of urban areas and um, ghetto, not I don't wanna use the word ghetto, but the projects type of those type of environments because you will develop some
Yeah,
sensitivity,
yeah, you're done.
because basically that's the only way you're actually gonna be able to survive by protecting yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
If you
And
look
not feeling. You
Yeah,
cannot feel because I mean, you start feeling, then what's up with you? You know?
and that's where I was gonna go. I'm like, so it's like if I start feeling, then the very people that I'm hanging with, they're gonna question, like, "Why are you whining? Why are you feeling this kind of stuff, man? This happens every day. This is our life, you know." And but it's just so tough when I saw that. I was like, emotional numbness. Like I having a wife and kids, man, and been in this game for almost 30 years. It's like I couldn't even imagine walking around this house like that. Like
Yeah.
I I, I I mean, how do you even be with a woman?
It's yeah, because it's you can be with someone that understands you aren't emotional and she gives you passes and understands that. And if it's just sex, then we could do that. But
Uh,
when it comes down to connecting and have deeper revelation and feelings for one another, I'm not acknowledging that. I don't even know what that is. I'm not going to even feel that. And you can struggle once you are in that situation. And if anybody in the family starts to gain emotional intelligence, they're going to start to question,
right.
yo, you're not emotionally available or supportive.
Yeah.
So they may start to challenge the person who isn't, and they may with retreat and withdraw and feel like the bad person, or
Yeah.
they or they could, become a little more aware and try to meet that expectation, even if it's not within them, they
Yeah.
may learn some of the things that it takes to make it appear that they have
Are
emotional
trying.
needs. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they're trying to do it. It's like,
Mhm.
man. So when you I guess so once you even in that numbness, and then when you start talking about this hyper arousal, which is reacting with heightened sensitivity to perceived threats and leading to basically frequent um, irritabilities and then anger outbursts, which is, it gets, dangerous when you get those anger outbursts because then that means there's no discipline, there's no self control, which means that leads you to where you can actually do all kind of damage and harm to those who you love, right? You look at them and you say, "Man, I love you," but the trauma event is greater,
Yeah.
and the impact to me is greater to where I must protect myself, even from someone that I feel that is not. I know you don't mean it, but why do I still have to protect myself? Yeah, like, why do I got even better ways. Like, would someone that you love dearly be a threat? Why would you perceive that person? Like when you look at, like my parents got divorced when I was 10. And I think that was probably something is that you look at it, it's like, how do you go from my family to now this very family looks like a threat to your life? And I know that it's because of some type of traumatic event that took place. Um, But I just think at that time when you're younger, right? Because we're just talking about men in general,
Mhm.
and uh, to really even address older men with trauma, stress, you got to take everybody back to when they were, 5 years old, and kind of, and then walk from there because somewhere in there you'll find out that something went left or right. And
Yeah.
I think if you can listen to this conversation that we have, just kinda start dialing in like, "Man, I kinda been a jerk," or, "Why am I treating a family, like I said, a wife and kids, why am I a jerk in this relationship?" Or, "Why do my wife or my girlfriend perceive me to be a jerk?"
Mhm.
Because you have these hyper arousal type tendencies where it's like, I just put the glass over here, and then the anger outburst is just unbearable. It's like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So, what does that look like? And then, I mean, do you got any examples of what? And I know you can't go into details on certain things, but just from just being in this space,
Yeah.
how often do you hear people coming in or guys even admitting to the fact
Mhm.
that, hey, yeah, they may not use the word hyper arousal,
No, no, they don't.
but they also talk about having, because that just kind of is a sum of all the events that may take place with no discipline or no self control. But just those anger outbursts, like,
Yeah, you have learned behavior, what you
uh,
saw.
yes.
You didn't know anything different. So this is how your dad or your mom
Yep.
responded, your auntie, your grandmother, her sisters, your dad and his brothers, your dad's sister and brother. You see that all the time. So now this is how we respond in my family. This is what we do. And you want to make other people feel like it's okay because that's what you all do. Didn't mean anything by it. That's how we communicate. Well, no, you're hurting people in that sense. So they put the glass on the table without a coaster.
Right.
So does that mean that you're cussing them out? If you would like
Right.
them to have a coaster, you don't know how to use the words because we don't just use simple words. Not
Right.
in my household. We go off. We just look for a reason to go off.
Yeah.
So it's it's a lot of those things. And we are so sensitive about things that are important to us that we don't realize that we are over the top with it.
Mhm.
So that's why you get people that step on somebody's shoe and get killed
Right.
or get beat down,
Right.
as if I intended to step on your shoe
Right.
and disrespect you. Like I meant to bump into you.
Right.
I didn't. I didn't even know I bumped into you or stepped on something. So we have so much anger and so much angst and so much low tolerance because I'm not gonna be disrespecting and standing 10 toes down on mine. I
Right.
know there's a young man that like hit his sister because she disrespected him in front of his wife.
That's a lot.
I got to stand 10. I'm standing 10 all the time. So you hit your sister
Right.
because you felt disrespected in front of your wife. So what did she say? And it
Right.
was something ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was the truth, but he didn't want to deal with the truth about something. And so he felt his sister disrespected him. And that was his best response because hypersensitive don't know how to handle disappointment situations in an effective way where you can talk through those things.
Yeah.
But you got a charge because she said, "Oh no, I'm not dealing with it." So
Right.
you get on probation and you mad at her because she pressed charges
Right.
because that's your sister.
Right. And you just kind of and you never took out the time to mature and self-discipline,
Right,
which is a lot of our young men. I don't want to say they don't do it. I just think that being able to have that in front of you to watch another man have self-control, you have to literally watch that. You have to watch, you know, like my son is able to watch me something
right,
happen and he's able to look at me and go, man, I know dad wants to rip this wall out
right.
and he didn't. So
Yeah,
I'm teaching them that, oh yeah, I'm fired up.
right.
And I even talk to him about it. Like if I get in the car, I'll be like, dude, you know how dad is. And it's like, no, dad can't even believe you didn't. And it's like, eh, he don't understand. It's because you're here. It's
Yeah,
because you're here that I have to bite this. I got to bite the bullet on this because I got to teach you how to know when you have to go into full on protect mode.
right. I
But
mean, if we fought every fought,
uh,
if every like I teach the kids, like, listen, you don't have to take every invitation that you get, just like the number of invitations you get to events and parties and all of that. You don't accept them all. You just can't.
you can't.
Same thing when it comes down to someone that you feel is disrespecting you and you got to respond to.
Yep.
It's a way to deal with it, but it doesn't always have to end in violence. You don't always have to address it right then and in that moment because what's on the other side of the situation is what really matters.
Yep. And you will and unfortunately you don't understand that until you calm down and then it hits you that we
Because
need to have you come down to the station. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
but there's some people that feel like it's okay, like they will protect and have allegiance in the wrong ways in the wrong areas.
Yeah. Uh,
And when someone gets caught up, they could have committed the crime, know that they killed somebody, but that's my boy, so I have an allegiance to him, and I'm not even going to say he was wrong. Free
right.
him,
Yeah.
free
Right.
him, dude. You can still be your man's boy and talk to him and say, you know what, I'm gonna support the fact that you my boy, and I didn't agree with what you did, and I still got love for you.
Right.
You don't have to go through all of that because someone is your boy.
Right.
They can still be your boy and hold them accountable. That's a
Yep.
problem that we do not hold people accountable and we can't take accountability. And
Yeah.
when it's put on us, we get hyperarousal,
Yep.
sensitive, and we go off. When
Yeah.
really it's the expectation, we can't even trust that you're gonna come to work on time because you and we can't say anything because you might go off. You go nuts because you late.
Right. Right. I think today is just getting terrible. I was literally talking to my mom and she was just talking about the kids. She's a teacher. And so she was talking about the parents. And when we're talking about this hyper arousal, it's like and this anger outburst, it's like your kid is being bad. You know he's being bad. I say something to him, you don't want me saying nothing to him. So there's a rage. Like my mom's like, it just goes to the it goes on to 10 from 0 to 10 and we both just saw this kid do something that was not right, but you don't want nobody saying nothing to him, but then you don't correct it. And I think that that's why we want to have this conversation about trauma, because trauma can be reversed through counseling, through conversations, through mental detox, say to be having a mental detox.
Mhm.
And when I say that, I'm saying yes, get with a therapist, go in there, open up, share everything you got so that you can find out exactly why you respond the way that you do. I had a young guy hit me up on TikTok and was like, "Man, I'm 20 years old and I don't understand why I get so angry all the time."
Mhm.
He said, "I just get angry, man, and I just go off without even thinking." And I was and we had and I kinda went back and forth with him, and I literally talked about what we're talking about now, which is, unfortunately, man, there's stuff that happened in your life that you're angry about that you can't even put your finger on.
Yeah.
Then there's stuff that you're angry about that you do know about. Then there's stuff that you're angry about that you know that you should be or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So these things are just continue to pile up, is that we all know that we should be doing better or be better. So
Mhm.
we're angry that we're not.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
angry that my daddy wasn't here or my uncles didn't do me right. And then I'm
Mhm.
angry that I was the middle kid and my mama didn't love me right. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's this continual piling of misinformation.
Mhm.
And like you said too, it's like it could be true, but at some point we have to be able to dial in and we want to dig it up from the root. And the question is, how do we do that? You
Mhm.
know, and like I said, we want to put this platform together because we want to kind of talk about it so that we can have some solutions around actually uprooting some of these trauma events. So when we looking at this, um, here I got two different spaces here. So I have three ways that trauma makes men feel. So I mean, I think I found tons, and I just like I said, I kind of just took out three that I think that are the most dangerous today that we could talk about. And for you guys, I got isolation, shame
Mhm.
and guilt, and then emotional shutdown. So we're going to start with isolation.
Mhm.
And we know that that's the most dangerous one. That's where you're getting all your alcoholism, 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 or alcoholism,
It
like
works.
your drug addictions. Like that's where that isolation comes in, is when you start really having that loneliness, that alienation. I think you talked about that. Nobody gets me. Nobody understands me. When your mind is running through those type of rat races, normally you're going into some deep isolation. And like I told you guys before, this is a Christian podcast, so I know we're talking about trauma and stuff, but at the end of the day, we know that the enemy, the devil, wants isolation.
Yes.
He lives in isolation. He lives in shame and guilt, and
Yes.
emotional shutdown is just his bread and butter.
Yeah.
If there's no control over those emotions, he can just really run rapid. But just kind of talk to us about that or some things that actually can actually trigger to that isolation, um,
Yeah.
and feeling alone.
So there's so many things that can come up. One being the maybe death of somebody can
Oh,
create isolation. It can cause you to want to be locked into self and emotions, cause you to be overwhelmed in thought. You can feel like nobody understands you, as I said before. Somebody, a relationship that ended, or you have multiple disappointments and you feel like you're just better off by yourself. And once you are alone,
yeah,
the thinking kicks in. So you may drink and think and drink, smoke and whatever, pop pills. So now your thoughts are running rampant and even more intense, and everything is magnified. And then you become overwhelmed, and then you may pass out, wake back up, and go through the same cycle. But over time, you have
yeah,
now distanced yourself from everybody. Your mindset is altered because now you're coming from a deficit place, a negative place, whereas we understand that things went on, but you feel like it's safer by yourself because I don't have to trust anybody and I ain't gonna let myself down. Not realizing that you absolutely are not trustworthy and you're within yourself right now
That
and
is,
you're letting yourself down. You
yep,
are attacking yourself with unhealthy substances and
yep,
unhealthy thinking patterns, and it's causing you to be stuck, but you feel safe, which
mm,
is an illusion.
yeah,
So any type of situation that you find to be too difficult to deal with when it involves the external world, you can retreat within self and stay. You can play the video games for days, for hours,
yep,
have your own home gym, and especially with like DoorDash and Uber and Eats and all of that, you can just order in and stay in the house and never leave
right, and working from home. I mean,
and work from home.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
tough one. So I guess each one of these kind of bleed into each other because I guess after you run rampant through isolation and it has totally sucked you dry, I guess the next thing would be shame and guilt. I guess
If
that
you're aware, and you may not even be aware for a long time. And then
uh,
when you realize what all you've done, the shame and guilt can kick in. Guess what
yikes,
happens? If it's an extended period of time, you don't even know how to.
yeah,
So then you're just stuck. If you try to get in there and meet and talk to the family or friends or loved ones and let someone else in, you are now um, at a deficit because you can't relate on that level because you've been infused with negativity and
yeah,
unhealthy thinking patterns. So what happens is when you start to communicate and everybody's looking at you like you weird or
right,
everybody gets silent because what you said just doesn't make sense because you've been on those online platforms and a lot of them are not good.
I
So
know, and
you
not,
give all of your trust into what they're saying,
yeah,
not realizing that they are coming from a hurt and painful perspective, but
yep,
because you can relate to them, you feel like it's okay. But
yep,
really, they're fueling the area that which you need to get strengthened
yeah,
in a negative way.
which is just tough.
Yeah,
Like, this is such a deep topic, to talk
yeah,
about trauma and and traumatic events and stress and, because I think it's just, it just puts you in a place like, you know, well, that never could be me. Like,
yeah.
I'm strong enough to not have to deal with anything like that, but, I mean, me and my wife, we lost a child in the middle of our 2 that we have. That
Mhm.
was tough. Like,
Yeah.
that was a tough window to sit at.
Mhm.
Imma tell you, looking out that window was extremely hard. Uh,
Mhm.
like I said, I think building the relationship that me and my wife have over the years and pouring into each other at a high rate and then centering all of that tucked into God and his word is what has helped us get through all these type of traumatic events, that we've been able to sit in God and sit in that peace and have my mom pray for it,
Yeah.
going to people. And so I'm telling you this not to sound like a superhero. I'm telling you this because
Yeah.
I know that you have to have some people that you can go to. My mom prays at the drop of a hat, and it's like, we're not gonna make it. Like, you gotta pray. Like, literally, people are like, "Oh, you should go to God." It's like, I don't feel like that right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's not my main thing right now. I'm like, I'm still stuck in the wow factor.
Right, right, right. I'm in pain. I don't even have the strength, and that's the only way you can get through is have the one that actually has been strengthened to be able to help pull you out. That's why we're here.
Yep,
When somebody else goes through something that you have the strength, spiritual strength, and wherewithal to know what to do and what to use in the moment, because it
yep,
may not be the moment to feed a bunch of scriptures. It's the moment to pray. It might be the moment to listen, but you got to
yep,
have discernment in
yep,
those things. When you don't have that support system, that's the power of God and the Holy Ghost. And if you don't have that, or you don't allow yourself to trust the work and the hand of God,
yep,
you can end up having all of those other behaviors that would come in, like gambling and the sexing and the cold shoulder, lack of intimacy,
Yeah.
fighting, and the inability to form sustainable relationships because all you do is
Yeah.
create problems and situations because you're still that hurting individual.
Yeah.
And everything you're hypersensitive because everything has you on high alert because you're a hurting person that has not healed. So your anxiety is on 10 all the time
Yeah.
because you never allowed the peace of God to come in when someone was trying to extend that to you
Yeah.
because we hurt.
We that's dude, I was as soon as you was finished, that's just what I was gonna say is that unfortunately, you hurt, you will be hurt at some point. You even might be crushed at some point. But
Crushed.
but as we talking about this, and yes, Mr. Andre is a great source of taking some issues and situations to him to talk about and to be able to, basically free your mind.
Mhm.
But nothing or no one can replace the what the power of God can do for your life. So I do want to throw that out there is that you take Christ, you take his word, you use those two components, and then you go and sit down with someone like Andre. And I'm gonna tell you what, it just does miracles. I have family members, my sister. I mean, my sister had me laughing. She was like, I think everybody needs a therapist or a counselor because
It's pretty much
everybody has stuff that they really need to talk about that you just don't feel comfortable sharing with other people because, like, you don't want people, like you said, looking at you weird. But, but because of the, ability to have that confidentiality with, someone like yourself,
Mhm.
you can go in there and share that information, man, and then feel really, really good about, because you feel good. I mean, you feel great when you can tell somebody all that's ailing you. Like, you just like, "Dude, I'm on a cliff and I'm literally hanging by one finger, and then by the time you get there, you're standing back on top of the mountain, right? Walking, and you're actually starting to walk down the mountain when you leave from talking with someone. And so I just want to tell us, like, we can't be afraid to sit down and have a conversation. And if you don't, and maybe Andre and team, the licensed therapists, the doctors, and all the psychiatrists, maybe they're spooky people. They're scary, right? It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, some are. It's everybody is not this.
They're not.
It's not a cookie cutter thing. You can
You
choose, and
can
this
choose.
one may not work, and this one may work.
Exactly.
It's
The
definitely somebody that will be able to assist.
Yes, so don't
And
throw them all into one batch and be like, "Well, I tried to talk to this person and they." No, you and this is why we are always gonna throw the God piece in there, that the relationship with Christ, because the discernment would be, "Lord, send me to someone who can connect with me, somebody who can actually be used as a tool to help heal me, like, I need to be healed," but his word said basically that we should be confessing our sins one to another, so that automatically tells you, if all everybody has something against talking to therapists and all that stuff, listen to me. God's word says that we should be sharing and confessing those sins one to another as saints.
right,
And
and we are
so
helpers one to
yeah,
another. We
that's
are in the body
we are
together.
in it together. They are
Mm,
Christian. Andre is a Christian therapist. This guy's his values and his morals are rooted in God's word. Now, does he have to go through by the standard of what his license affords him? Yes, but it's all gonna be coming from a heart and a spirit from Christ, even
mm,
as he talks through these things, and I know that because I've been talking to the guy for a few months and developing this rela I wouldn't have him on here if I didn't already, vet him in a way to be able to have conversations. We done been out to lunch. I mean, really getting to know him so that I can make sure that his yes mean yes, his no mean no, because I don't wanna bring anybody that a year or 2 from now, you look up and be like, "Oh, this was that guy Q had on."
right. It's like, oh,
The clown. So, and I'm always evaluating people who I'm engaging with, and I expect them to do the exact same thing for me. I should always live up to the exact same thing that I told you on day 1. And I think that that's what we're trying to get here. And so I want guys to understand that that's what we want. We want to be able to be real. relevant to what's going on, but we want to be able to be the biggest thing, which is honest. And
Yeah.
honestly, we as men, we are hurting.
Yeah.
And this is not sappy, but it's that inside. And I'm not talking about something crazy, life is ending hurt. But I'm just saying things happen to us, man, and we feel it.
Right.
But and I know as a man who, I'm a ashy hand man. Like I want to be, a protector provider. And sometimes you don't want to show that part of yourself, that vulnerability, because you know that people are leaning on you,
Right.
And so my thing is that it's good to be able to sit down with someone and have lunch. I learned that uh and this is gonna sound funny, but like all of my white friends, man, they're like, it's always about having lunch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. That's one of the greatest things that I've picked up over the last like 10 years is that those
Hmm.
guys, it's like, hey man, let's have a lunch for and I'm like, wow, just a quick little hour and a half, man. So I started adapting that into my life. I'm like, hey, Andre, what you got going on, man? He's like, nothing, man. Let's meet up for lunch. Okay, cool. Which I know you adapted because it was like, bet, let's meet over here, have
Right.
lunch. You get a good hour or two in, you feel good. I
Right.
feel like I got something from out of you. I hope that you got something from me, and then
Absolutely.
we get back to our game. So we only got about 5 more minutes, but what I'm gonna do is we got 3 experiences that man may have, but um, instead of going to there, I'm just gonna read these 3 scriptures since we kind of been in the God vibe here. But Psalms 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and
Yes.
save those who are crushed in spirit."
Hmm.
That's Psalms 34:18. Then we have Isaiah 41:10, and it says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." So, what I'm telling you that there's somebody out here that actually cares for you. And if you get into him, get into his word, accept Jesus Christ into your heart,
Right.
understand that he's there for you, and he's there for you. I don't know. My life is a wreck. My life is a mess. I just told you. He came for the brokenhearted. He loves that your life is a tragic mess. You know why? Because now he knows that only Jesus, his son, can rescue you. And then
Right.
the last one is my every Christian favorite one, which is
Yeah.
I had 29 and 11. For I know the plans I have for you, and declares the Lord, the plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Do you hear me? Not to harm you, but plans to give you hope in the future. And,
Future.
and so the thing is that just understanding that God is not here for harm. So when we go through trials and tribulations, that does not come from him. This is a fallen world. That's what you have to understand. And when we get more time, we may dive into that as well. Because when we're talking about these traumatic events, a lot of that is hampered and is sealed by this world that's just fallen.
Right.
Um, and like I said, when you have people like Mr. Andre here who takes out the time to get a license and spends countless hours um, educating himself on how to help us as men, I think we do him a disservice by not acknowledging the fact that he can actually do something and help us. So,
Right.
uh, but what do you have on that, man? What do you? Uh, uh, we got a couple of more minutes here, but just when you look at that experience, man, just I think we're talking about relationships and stuff, and so you kind of talked about that difficulties in forming relationships,
Yeah.
and, and since the platform on YouTube is big into relationships right now, everybody is an expert, and I don't see anybody married on here, which blows me away. That it's like no married person, but everybody knows how to tell you how to be married. But what does that look like?
So I'll just use some examples from a conversation I was having earlier because you have to know how to not just admit when you were wrong and own what you've done, but your actions have to actually change, align, and consider your partner, your spouse's um, whatever their concern is. You address it and you do it in an effective way because if you don't, then you're just going to be stuck. So being able to prefer your partner, compromise, and talk through things helps. But when you are guarded because you don't trust anybody and you got to do this self preservation thing going, that's going to hinder the progression of any relationship. And that's what I see a lot of people do. They consider only what it is they need and not what anybody else need. Even if they get married, I'm still going to do my thing, so it don't matter. I got married because I'm supposed to, I guess.
That's terrible.
That's what I hear. I heard it, and one brother is like, "Hey, I'm 30. I want to have kids. I'm about to get married." But yet, when it came down to the work, the rigor, the obligations of a marriage, you
Yeah.
want to bow out. I
Yeah.
said, "No, brother. We had these conversations before you did it. Now you got to do the work to make it happen."
Yeah.
Because I don't know why you thought it would be you would be able to navigate like a single man being married.
Right.
You just can't have single benefits and be married. You got to make sure that you are committed and obligated and carry that through.
Yeah.
So
And
holding
that's
on
another,
to
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm just holding on to those standards and understanding that forming relationships and what you do when you have your best successful relationships, considering why that was successful and why that was good. But if you weren't doing the work and the person just compromised, that wasn't a healthy relationship. Because a lot of times people just like you so much that they're just gonna do whatever you want them to do, just
Yeah.
just to be with you.
Yeah.
But that is doing you a disservice, and you will never have a healthy reciprocal connection with anybody if you don't address what it is that hinders you from forming those positive, reciprocal, healthy dialogues, because that's what built relationships.
Yeah. I think you said the perfect thing is that people compromise. And what happens is that when the novelty of the marriage wears off, after those first couple of years, then you find out that I probably should have never did that, right? Yeah, I've been married 26 years, and it takes some planning. I'll put it like that. I don't want to go deep into it because that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I man, our time is shot. And the time just seemed like it just went too fast. I was like, how is it already an hour? But the conversation is good. Uh, fellas, listen, we want to stay very diligent on keeping ourselves healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically. And on this podcast, we're going to be plugging in basically to all three of those aspects from every area of our life. Right now, we're diving into mental health because this month is mental health awareness. But believe me, you that over the course of this year, this season, man, we're gonna be plugging into all kind of areas that we can be strengthened in from our relationships, our health, and our physical. From our mental and our physical health and our spiritual health. So, you guys continue to join in with me. Make sure you guys share, share, share. Once again, I got Mr. Andre on here, man. I'm going to put all of his information where you can find him. He has some events that he's a part of coming up in July. A great event, and so I'm going to make sure I put that in the comment section for you guys. And if you want to connect with him, his link will be in there, and you can reach out to him. So, hey man, thank you, Dre, for coming on again, man.
Hey man, thank you. It's an honor.
I got probably 100 more topics, so 2024 is going to be fire for us.
Yes, sir. It's all in.
um, and I'm gonna try to get one, man, where we can sit together and do one
Yeah,
and do one live and see what type of comments we can get on our next one. I want to do these recording ones, man, but I want to get us on a live one. So you guys get ready. Me and Dre, we're gonna come live, man, and we want questions right on the spot. So
let's
you
do
guys
it.
have a good day. All right. Peace out, Dre.
Peace.